Games Workshop and Warhammer 40,000 has retconned their Adeptus Custodes. They have introduced female versions of these characters, and not only have they retconned this, but they have also lied about it being a retcon. Before we get into this, I'd like to ask you, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications, so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. Wrote this up over at thatparkplace.com. And indeed, Games Workshop, the company behind Warhammer, confirmed that it retconned the Adeptus Custodes by adding female Space Marines. If you're unfamiliar with the Adeptus Custodes, they're basically the elite of the elite of Space Marines. They're not obviously Adeptus Astartes, which are what we typically view as Space Marines, but these are the elite, and they have added female versions of them in their upcoming Codex on the Codex Adeptus Custodes, which comes out later this month from Black Library. And I think Archcast, who's probably one of the biggest Warhammer players, very knowledgeable about the Warhammer universe. He does entire Warhammer info dumps and really does a really good job of explaining all the factions and the lore and everything at Warhammer. He did a really good video on this initially, and then he did a follow-up as well. But he shared an excerpt from this upcoming Codex that does indeed confirm that there is an Adeptus Custodes who is female. Her name is Custodian Calidis Taravalia Kesh. Stood upon the bridge of a Cobra-class destroyer named Vigilant Flame. The warship belonged to the mighty Battle Fleet Solar. She lingered in the shadows at the back of the bridge, positioned at a spot where she could observe the actions of every crew member, be they in the instrumentation pits, at the armament shrines, or in the case of Shipmaster Lethwick, stood Ramrod straight before his command throne. So there you go. A female Adeptus Custodes in the upcoming Codex Adeptus Custodes that's coming out later this month. I think it's on April 27th. And then Arch also shared another excerpt to dissuade individuals who might counter that previous one is not an Astartes Custodes, but she could be a sister of Siren. But it says here, Kesh was warned before anyone else aboard. Sensing a sudden empiric energy spike coupled with the surge of overpressure and sharp temperature drop that presaged a teleport strike, her guardian spear was leveled and armed before the first cry of alarm or howl of a klaxon rang through the bridge. So her wielding a guardian spear shows that she is indeed an Adeptus Custodes and not a sister of Siren. And then Arch does a really good job bringing up a previous Adeptus Custodes Codex that shows that this is indeed a retcon. It says here, all Custodes begin their lives as the infant sons of the noble houses of Terra. It is a mark of incredible prestige to surrender one's child to this most glorious of callings within the Imperium, and many notable clans amongst the Terran aristocracy have willingly given up almost entire generations of newborn sons to earn it. So very clear there that they were all sons, not daughters, sons. They were all male, and there were no women. So this is indeed a retcon. And then in his first video, he does note that this has nothing to do with representation or anything like that. It is simply just a political power play, he says. That is all. That is all it has ever been. That is all it ever will be. This is the ideological capture of the franchise happening here in real time. We know the Custodes are male, which we do know via that excerpt. And he goes on to point out there were no mentions of female Custodes before in pretty much anything. He says nothing in the Horus Heresy or any preceding source books. So there were no female Custodes. This is indeed a retcon. Nevertheless, Games Workshop did indeed confirm that there are female Custodes now, but they are not claiming it as a retcon. They are claiming it has always been that way. We know this is not true. We know this is a lie. So we have Games Workshop here absolutely trying to gaslight its own players and customers and fans. This is what they posted. Since the first of the 10,000 were created, there have always been female custodians. Simply not true. We have the Codex that shows that. It's just, they're just trying to gaslight their own customers now and lying to people, and shows that they indeed have been captured ideologically, given the fact that they're so willing and so easily lie to their own customers, despite the obvious untruth of it all. From there, Arch does he thinks that a lot of this is influenced by investment firms BlackRock and Vanguard. He shared this. He shared the shareholder statistics, and you do see that BlackRock and Vanguard make up about 11% of the entire shares combined for Games Workshop. And we do know that BlackRock CEO Larry Fink said back in 2017 at the New York Times Deal Book Summit that you have to force behaviors. And if you don't force behaviors, whether it's gender or race or just any way you want to say the composition of your team, you're going to be impacted. And that's not just recruiting, it is development, as Ken said. When asked how he plans to force change, Fink said this: it has to be imbued in the culture of a firm. It has to be talked about. It has to be shown. Behaviors across the entire firm and entire region have to be similar, and every citizen of the firm has to understand what is acceptable behaviors and what are unacceptable behaviors. Now, obviously, Fink has come out and said that he no longer uses those terms ESG and DEI because he believes they're like too politicized, but he's obviously still implementing this stuff in companies. He's made that very clear in interviews as well, saying he doesn't use those terms anymore because they're too politicized, but he's still doing exactly what those terms mean. He's just using other language now, trying to hide that. I know one of the new buzzwords is bridge. And that's actually a little bit different. It's not even trying to get this stuff in there. It's trying to institutionalize it once it's already kind of been in place. So it is now a permanent thing within a lot of these companies, government bodies, etc., that Larry Fink is trying to push his agenda on. So clearly this stuff is politically motivated and is used as a tool to claim power. And that's why they're lying about it. And Arch would go on to say in his second video, as we talked about in the last video where we covered an article which makes this all clear, this has nothing to do with female space marines. This is why the demand was immediately made for female space marines after the canonization of female custodes. This is not about representation. It's not about having female models. It is about power and influence. It is about subverting and taking over what has at this point become a British institution. That is the only goal. And I 100% agree with this. Is something I've been talking about, whether it's talking about what they've done with the Rings of Power over there at Prime Video and Amazon MGM Studios, clearly trying to push evil ideologies through that show to demoralize people, turn them away from the truth, what is good, true, and right, and as well as beauty. We see this through Star Wars. Kathleen Kennedy is on record back in 2015, before we even got the first Star Wars sequel trilogy film, that she was totally trying to push feminism through Star Wars, and they've absolutely done that. And obviously, it's been an absolute detriment to their bottom line, but they continue to do that. We saw it with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It has become the MCU. They actively talked about how representation was part of their business model back in like 2018, and since they made it part of their business model, they've lost lots and lots of money. We'll just look at 2023. Absolute bomb with the Marvels. Did not even make 200 million at the box office. Complete and utter failure. And we know that had almost at least $367 million in a production budget. Indiana Jones, same thing. Obviously emasculating one of the more prominent male heroes that we had in Western pop culture. So this is exactly what these people have been doing to all of these kind of pop culture media entertainment franchises, if for lack of a better term there. I mean, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, race swapping, April O'Neil in the most recent one. And then it looks like they had the whole big controversy with Splinter potentially making him a homosexual and then having to switch it real quick at the end, and then claiming it was all some kind of like marketing snafu. So, and again, back to Games Workshop here though, and Warhammer. This is not unheard of, right? They posted this whole declaration to diversity back in June 2020 in this post here on X. Warhammer is for everyone. One of the great powers of our hobby is its ability to bring people together in common cause, to build bonds and friendships that cross divides. We believe in and support a community united by shared values of mutual kindness and respect. Clearly, this is not the case anymore. They are embracing evil ideologies that are all about division, all about destruction, all about hate. And they have nothing to say about building bonds and friendships that cross divides. It's not what they stand for anymore. When you're embracing feminism, which this looks like it is. It could possibly be transgender ideology too. They could do some weird stuff with that moving forward now, given the fact that the Custodes used to be all male and now all of a sudden two females are popping up. I would not be surprised if they did some weirdo sick stuff with that. But those ideologies are not about building bonds and friendships that cross divides. Those ideologies are about death and destruction. It's just absolutely evil stuff. It's kind of ironic, right? That they're embracing the ideologies of chaos, and trying to implant them into the Imperium. Maybe this woman will go crazy, and she'll become chaos because she that's what they're embracing here. Nevertheless, they go on and say our fantasy settings are grim and dark, but this is not a reflection of who we are or how we feel the real world should be. We will never accept nor condone any form of prejudice, hatred, or abuse in our community or in the Warhammer hobby. So obviously, they are, though, right? If you embrace a lot of these ideologies, that it rejects certain religions, and they do indeed are prejudiced against certain religions. Obviously, transgender ideology and homosexuality are not accepted by the major religions in the world. Obviously, me speaking as a Christian and a Catholic, they are not accepted, and those practices are indeed condemned, and we are instructed not to tolerate them. That's not to say we don't want to bring the individuals who are practicing those into communion with Jesus Christ, but they have to stop those practices and actively repent from them and work to refrain from them. So by making this clear here, we see what transgender proponents think of Christians. We see what homosexual proponents think of Christians as well. They claim that by us practicing our faith, living our faith, that we're being prejudiced towards them. So this statement really doesn't make any sense at all. It's quite hypocritical and contradictory, and it's clearly just going to be used as a cudgel. But nevertheless, it goes on and says, we will continue to diversify the cast of characters we portray through miniatures, art, and storytelling so everyone can find representation and heroes they can relate to. So there you have it right there. They are declaring their allegiance to this whole representation, diversity ideology, this whole skin deep identity politics ideology, which, again, as I said, is all about division. It has nothing to do with crossing divides and bringing people together. And then the last sentence is even more hypocritical. It says, and if you feel the same way, wherever and whenever you are, we're glad you are part of the Warhammer community. If not, you will not be missed. So they just talked about how they were all about building bonds and friendships that cross divides. But if you don't agree with us, you will not be missed. Piss off. You just can't really make it up right there. It just shows kind of the contradictory, hypocritical nature of these ideologies, and just shows that it really is indeed about division, has nothing to do with what they say mutual kindness and respect. It's the opposite is what it really is. But like I said, not surprising that they've done this. I do think this calls into question what we can expect from the Prime Video series that Henry Cavill is working on. If this is indeed now part of their lore, how much of it will infect the TV show or the potential movie that he is working on? I do think it calls that into question. I think it calls into question the upcoming Space Marine 2 game. I think it calls into question pretty much everything that they are doing moving forward, because, as I think Arch says, they are now ideologically captured, and they made it clear that they were ideologically captured in 2020. They are now showing it to us that they are indeed ideologically captured with this retcon of the Adeptus Custodes. But let me know what you guys make of this. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, but to always speak the truth.